What if everything you were taught about money was designed to keep you from ever truly having it? Not by accident, not through neglect, but deliberately woven into the language of school, religion, and culture with the precision of a trap. Work hard, stay humble, be patient, and your reward will come. These are the instructions handed to the many, so that the few may operate without interference. Machiavelli understood this centuries before the modern economy existed. He watched it in the courts of Florence, in the chambers of princes, in the quiet devastation of men who gave their entire lives to systems that were never designed to reward them. And what he saw was not a mystery. It was a mechanism, cold, indifferent, and perfectly constructed. The men at the top were not smarter. They were not more deserving. They simply understood the rules of a game that everyone else was too distracted, too obedient, or too afraid to acknowledge was being played. Here is the first thing Machiavelli would tell you if he sat across from you today. Money is not a reward. It is a language, and like any language, those who speak it fluently hold power over those who do not. The man who earns a wage believes he is participating in an exchange, his time for currency, his energy for survival, and on the surface this appears fair, it appears rational. But look closer, and the arrangement reveals itself for what it truly is. A system in which one man trades the irreplaceable for the replaceable every single day until there is nothing left to trade. Time cannot be recovered. The hours spent executing someone else's vision are gone permanently, yet money, that paper abstraction, can be printed, borrowed, multiplied, and manufactured by those with access to its mechanisms. The wage earner gives the finite to receive the infinite and believes he has made a reasonable deal. This is the first and most devastating illusion that keeps ordinary men poor. Machiavelli observed that wealth never flows toward desperation. It never moves in the direction of need. It moves, always and without exception, toward positioned strength. A man who needs money will accept poor terms. A man who controls something others need will set the terms himself. This asymmetry is not accidental. It is the foundational law of every marketplace, every negotiation, every transaction that has ever taken place between human beings. And once a man truly internalizes this, not as a concept, but as a lived reality, he stops asking how to earn more and starts asking something far more dangerous. What do I control that others cannot easily replace? This is where the thinking diverges. The ordinary man wakes up and asks what he can do today. The dangerous man wakes up and asks what he can build that will still be working 10 years from now without requiring him to be present. One is thinking about motion. The other is thinking about architecture. One is a labourer, regardless of his salary. The other is a strategist, regardless of his current resources. Machiavelli watched princes fall not because they lacked armies, but because they had built their power on borrowed foundations. Men whose loyalty was rented, structures that held only as long as the payments continued. The moment external support withdrew, the entire edifice collapsed, and he noted something chilling in this pattern. Most men build their financial lives the same way. A career that disappears when the company decides it no longer needs them. An income that stops the moment they stop showing up. A lifestyle constructed entirely on a foundation that belongs to someone else. This is not wealth. This is the performance of wealth, maintained at the pleasure of whoever holds the actual power. True positioning begins the moment a man stops building on rented ground and starts building on terrain he owns entirely. This does not require vast initial capital. It requires a different quality of thinking. A willingness to ask uncomfortable questions about where real leverage lives, and a discipline severe enough to pursue that leverage even when the returns are invisible for months or years at a time. Because here is what Machiavelli understood about power that almost no one wants to hear. The period before anything is visible is the most important period of all. It is during that invisible phase that the architecture is laid. It is during that silence that the dangerous man is doing the work that will later appear to others as sudden, unexplainable success. They will call it luck. They will call it timing. They will invent 100 explanations that allow them to believe it could not have been achieved through deliberate design. Because if it could have been, they would have to confront the fact that they chose comfort over construction every single day, and that is a confrontation most men will spend their entire lives avoiding. The second thing Machiavelli would force you to understand is this: perception is not separate from power. It is power. And the man who cannot control how he is seen will always be at the mercy of how others choose to see him. This is not about deception in the shallow sense. It is not about pretending to be something you are not for the sake of vanity. It is about understanding that reality in human affairs is not determined by what is true. It is determined by what people believe. And belief is a thing that can be shaped, directed, and architected by those who understand its mechanics. Machiavelli studied men who commanded rooms without raising their voice, who negotiated terms without revealing their hand, who built reputations so precise and so deliberate that their name alone opened doors that others spent years trying to unlock. These men were not necessarily more capable than their rivals. In many cases, they were not. But they understood something their rivals refused to accept, that the game of wealth is not played in spreadsheets and ledgers alone. It is played in minds. In the quiet calculations that people make when they decide who to trust with opportunity, who to invite into rooms where real decisions are made, and who to leave outside wondering why progress never seems to arrive. Most men give no thought to this architecture. They believe that quality of work speaks for itself, that competence will be recognized and rewarded automatically by a world that is watching fairly. And this belief, sincere and almost noble in its naivety, is one of the most expensive mistakes a man can carry through his life. Quality without visibility is a tree falling in a forest with no one present. The sound is real, the event occurred, and it matters to no one. Machiavelli saw this pattern destroy talented men repeatedly throughout his observations of power. Men of genuine skill who operated in obscurity, while men of lesser ability but superior positioning accumulated influence, capital, and opportunity at a pace that seemed to defy logic. The difference was never talent. The difference was always architecture. One man built systems that made his value visible, memorable, and essential to others. The other trusted that the world would eventually notice him on its own. The world does not notice. The world is occupied entirely with its own needs, its own fears, and its own ambitions. Attention must be commanded, not waited for. And the man who understands this stops spending his energy exclusively on doing and begins investing a serious portion of his thinking into positioning, into asking not only what value he creates, but how that value is perceived, who perceives it, and whether those people are positioned to act on what they see. This requires a quality that Machiavelli considered among the rarest in human nature: the ability to see yourself from the outside, to step back from your own effort and ask with cold objectivity whether the picture you present to the world is the picture that serves your long-term design. Most men are too close to their own lives to do this. They are buried in the daily execution of their work and never climb high enough to observe the shape of what they are building or how it appears to those whose cooperation they will eventually need. Machiavelli was precise on this point. A prince who cannot manage his image will have his image managed for him by his enemies, and enemies are never generous in this work. They will define you in whatever terms serve their interests. They will let silence fill with assumptions that benefit them and cost you. And by the time you realize this is happening, the narrative will have solidified into something that years of contradicting behavior may never fully reverse. The same law operates in markets and business with identical ruthlessness. In a world saturated with options, noise, and competing claims on attention, the man whose positioning is unclear gets filtered out before his actual capability is ever evaluated. He never gets the chance to prove himself because he was eliminated in a judgment made before the conversation began. This is not fair. Machiavelli never promised fair. He only promised true. And the truth is that the dangerous man does not wait to be evaluated on equal terms. He sets the terms of evaluation in advance. He decides what question will be asked about him and constructs the answer before anyone else has the chance to raise a different question. This is not manipulation in the vulgar sense. It is strategy in the precise sense. There is a profound difference between the two, and that difference lives entirely in the quality of thinking that drives the action. Now understand something deeper that Machiavelli embedded in his observations and that most readings of his work entirely miss. The control of perception is not only external, it is internal. The stories a man tells himself about what he is capable of, about what he deserves, about what is realistic given his circumstances, are the most powerful forces shaping the trajectory of his life. And most of those stories were installed without his consent, by people who never interrogated them either. A man raised to believe that wealth belongs to a particular class, a particular type of person, a particular level of intelligence or luck, will unconsciously organize his behavior to confirm that belief. He will stop short of opportunities that contradict it. He will find reasons why this particular moment is not the right one. He will interpret setbacks as confirmation of limits rather than as information about adjustments. The prison is real. But the walls are made of story, not stone. Machiavelli would say to such a man, the first territory you must conquer is not a market or an industry. It is your own perception of what is possible for you, because until that territory is held with certainty, every external strategy you attempt will be quietly undermined from within by the part of you that does not believe it will work, and that quiet sabotage is invisible to everyone, including yourself, which makes it the most dangerous adversary you will ever face.